So that was fantastic. We're going to have another great guest, and we're going to have Major General Bo Young speak with him. I'll tell a little bit about this guy because I happen to know him, Cameron Holt. His brother is Blano, Brigadier General Blaine Holt, friend of mine, and is a friend of General Petraeus's, and helped fly him in on occasion, this kind of stuff. So he's done a lot of great work. And we had Cameron Holt speak maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And he was brilliant then. I'm sure he's even smarter now anyway,
Right.
but he was sort of the belle of the ball at that event that we had. And just someone who's really dedicated to improving the acquisitions process, et cetera, and do all the things we want to accomplish. So I don't want to take up too much more time, but I do want to bring Major General Bo Young back on, Peacemaker Partners. Thank you both for hosting this entire day and being our honorary host and helping put this thing together. Thank you for your moderation of some of these panels, et cetera. And we look forward to you having a fantastic conversation with General Holt.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I think it's been good. I think we've kind of done what we set out to do, which is something for everybody, starting from the strategic context to the nuts and bolts of how to crack the code at places like AFworks and DIU. I mean, the folks that spoke today on these topics, and General Holt, who we're going to hear from here momentarily, what's interesting about them is they understand the strategic part of it, but they also understand the tactical and the reality of somebody who's really trying to do their best to get into DoD and all the frustrations and how to break the code on it. So yeah, I think one of the things that's been a real common theme is make sure you know your customer, and that you are not just chasing, great ideas out there, but things that really, really matter to the services. And start there. And if you don't start there, then you're probably going to spin your wheels for a considerable time.
Yes, sir. And they are articulate on their websites what their primary needs are. You can go to AFworks, SoftWorks, whatever, and they'll give you a sense of what the major challenges that they're facing, et cetera, and they'll help guide you along. And again, I want to say thank you for helping stand out, or you're standing up with the 75th Innovation Command. So you're a pioneer in this area, and thank you for that, and thank you for your service with us now.
Well, thanks, Dave. And yeah, I don't know if we're going to take a short break or if General Holt's ready. And
I'm not sure. I thought I saw General Holt there for a moment, but let's double check real quick. And if not, yeah, we could take a quick break. General Holt, are you with us? I don't think so.
Not here yet.
Yeah,
so.
Let's take about a 3-4 minute break, if you would.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Hi, this is General Holt.
Hello, General Holt. Hello, General. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm sorry it had difficulties getting in.
No worries, sir. I know you were coming from another appointment as well. Thank you for fighting those technical difficulties. And we're going to turn you over to Major General Bo Young.
Hey, General Holt. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, I'm going to do a quick intro, and then we'll just jump right in it, Cameron, if that's okay.
Sure.
So for the audience, General Cameron Holt is the Assistant Secretary for Contracting with the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics, headquartered in Washington, D.C. In this role, he's responsible for all aspects of contracting relating to the acquisition of weapon system, logistics, operational support for the Air Force, and provides contingency contracting support. He also oversees training, organizing, and equipping of a workforce of some 8,000 contracting professionals who execute programs worth more than $65 billion, that's with a B, annually. General Holt received his commission through ROTC at the University of Georgia, which means he's a happy guy when he watches football on Saturday, at least this year. And he's a joint qualified officer with multiple deployments and support of Operation Enduring Freedom. So Cameron, welcome to the event.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
So why don't we start off with the threat? Because I think that, it's the threat really starts the discussion in terms of acquisition, or at least it should. And so I guess let me ask you if you would agree with that, and how you all folks in the Air Force think about the threat.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Bo. In fact, As we talked before, I'm leading a pretty massive change effort in Air Force contracting, and I've been in this current role for 3 years. And I feel so strongly about what you just said that the very first thing I did 3 years ago was to actually ask the intel community to help me come up with a threat briefing. And we got to a threat briefing that was okay. It wasn't great, but it was at the secret no foreign level so that I could brief as many of our contracting folks in the Air Force as possible. And my objective there was to have one of them who has sat in every seat you can sit in Air Force contracting, pretty much, talk to them for an hour about nothing but the threat. No discussion of FAR 15, 402-2, but another contracting expert, but also an airman and a father. Talk to them about why it's important for them to use their extensive contracting expertise instead of what they've used it for in the past to ensure compliance or keep us out of trouble, or as some commanders or PEOs might say, I don't know what you do, but just keep me out of jail. What I would call a compliance focus. And what I'm asking them to do now is I really have no confidence that Congress is going to change the system fast enough in ways that are responsive to the threat. So what I'm asking them to do unapologetically is I want to now use your expertise to turn our attention towards China and the threat and to complicate their problem by accelerating everything and to actually hack our own antiquated Cold War acquisition and resourcing system that we're still trying to use to fight an adversary who is very sophisticated and using principally economics and information manipulation and coercion to beat us. Bo, I would argue that China's been at this for some time, and they've observed the American way of war for a long time. And they are not confronting us force on force. For us, victory in war really takes on a military feel and to some extent a diplomatic feel. And ever since World War II, for whatever reason, we've become increasingly apologetic and uncomfortable, in fact, incompetent at using economic power and information power in the world. And I'm not quite sure why we are so skittish about that. But the alternative is very dangerous. And China has observed this about us, that we principally see warfare as a military and diplomatic endeavor. And that, we really don't consider that we're at war until CNN breaks into the programming in the middle of the night and some explosion has gone off somewhere and they announce the war has begun. I would argue the war against America from a Chinese perspective started maybe in the 1979 range. And they have done a very good job, frankly. There was a book written in 1999 called Unrestricted Warfare by a couple of PLA colonels that I would commend everybody to read. It's a little cumbersome because it's translated from Mandarin, but it outlines how you tear apart a Western style democracy from the inside out and watch us tear each other apart. And how do you do that economically and with information manipulation? And using all the instruments of national power as one. And that's kind of how they see things. They don't think of One Belt, One Road, for example, as just an economic initiative. It's also an information initiative. It's an initiative to erode our diplomacy with countries under One Belt, One Road that are otherwise our allies, and to weaken our diplomacy in the world. It is also a military initiative. If you look around the world at all the infrastructure projects being funded by China and putting countries in catastrophic debt to them throughout Central America, South America, the Caribbean, Africa, now Southern Europe. The latest one that I saw to join was Italy. Under Chinese leadership in the world, Italy has allowed China to fund its own internal infrastructure. And if you don't think that has an effect on our diplomacy when it comes time for a diplomatic effort against China, you'd be mistaken about that. And why Germany thought it was the right thing to do to build an underwater natural gas pipeline with Russia, for example, that makes our diplomacy that much weaker with Russia because of the dependence on Russian natural gas for economic reasons. So China, and to a lesser extent Russia, have done a very good job at understanding how to employ that kind of coercion. And if you don't think it's effective, I pick on the NBA as one example because I'm still ticked off at them, frankly. And I grew up part of my childhood in Hong Kong, so I kind of have firsthand experience with this, but they tweeted out solidarity of support with the people of Hong Kong who are struggling for their freedom with China. And my heart goes out to them. They would gladly give up their economic advantages in the world. They would gladly give up their lives to keep their freedom. And the NBA tweeted out support. The very next day, the Chinese Communist Party expressed concern about their economic relationship with the National Basketball Association, who's trying to set up an NBA-like organization in China. And if you could imagine, China is a 1.5 billion person market, much bigger market than the United States. And immediately the NBA apologized and retracted. And what was even more alarming to me than that, Bo, was the lack of response from Americans. We see these news stories go by in 15-second spots, and we don't see the connections between them. And yet we look at the morning news and we look at the Hang Seng Index and what the currency of the yuan is doing against the US dollar, and we think we're just looking at market data. No, you're looking at algorithms. You're looking at exactly what they want us to see when they want us to see it. The map of the world that we look at now with borders and things like that tracks back to the Treaty of Westphalia 400 years ago. We don't think about that treaty every day, but they do. They think it's an affront on their natural position of leadership in the world, and they don't look at borders the same way. The map that we look at, they call in Mandarin, roughly translated, the map of national humiliation. And so when you start to get inside that psyche and you understand that they believe that all other governments of the world exist with their temporary permission, and then you look at our unalienable rights that have dominated the conversation in the globe for the last 245 years, they believe all that's quite temporary and that the rights of the individual don't matter. It is the rights of the collective as kind of communicated by the Chinese Communist Party that matter. And frankly, they're willing to ignore the international law of the sea when it benefits them and use it when it doesn't. When they steal our IP or they buy it, in some cases, a lot of our entrepreneurs that have really innovative technologies, they're looking for investors. China's figured out it's actually cheaper to buy our IP than it is to even steal it. And so they'll take small equity positions through a Credit Suisse or some bank in a young startup. They'll make sure that the owner is rich for the rest of their lives, take the IP, give it to a Chinese company, and squeeze the DoD out from doing business with them. And meanwhile, we're making the barriers to entry higher on our side. Every time we have a problem like cybersecurity, we add more clauses to my contracts. Well, what do you think that's going to do? It's going to shrink the defense industrial base. Now, traditional players like Lockheed or Boeing, they might like that, those barriers to entry staying high and them not having to compete with commercial companies in the United States. But I think that it's time for us to tear down those barriers to entry and actually compete against China with their predatory capital markets and practices, IP theft, and the degree to which they can go much faster than us because they don't have a Cold War acquisition and resourcing system that we have. I think we really need to start critically thinking about that. So that's the why. And when I've told people the why, I got to tell you, Bo, the culture has changed overnight. You have people like telling me, hey, I was going to retire. I'm pulling my papers. We're going to show these young contracting officers how to get after this and pour ourselves like water over the rocks and stop being more worried about the DC recrimination culture embarrassing us than we are about our adversary in the world. And so that's the reason for the why.
Yeah, that's incredible. There's already the chat's going crazy with laudatory comments. So in the context of that picture about the threat, then can you dive down a bit and be more specific about the strategy that you're implementing
Sure.
in order to address the threat, and then on the other side, the internal threat, the culture of complacency, the culture of risk averse leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And frankly, we've come by that risk aversely, honestly. You get a couple of face shots and you go back into your cave. But any large organization can succumb to the bureaucracy of starting to focus more on your own career advancement and what gets you promoted than you do on the mission of the organization. It can happen to any large organization. But we as leaders need to be sober about tearing that down. And one big part of that is to say, look, first we're gonna remove all the constraints, and then we're gonna stand behind people like a blast shield. And when the recrimination culture comes, and it will, and that's just part of our system, and I'm not disparaging it, we need to tell the truth about what we're doing and why we're doing it, and not freak out about mistakes. Honest mistakes are going to happen. As we lean forward in the straps in contracting and innovation, we're going to lose protests. Things are going to go wrong, and I don't care. I just don't care. The only thing I won't stand behind is a ethical problem. So we're leading something called mission-focused business leadership. And if you want, you can juxtapose that from where my diagnosis of where we were before that, which is compliance-focused business advisors. So compliance focus was the reason we did stuff. Now it's mission focus. That's the why. We don't do contracting for contracting's sake anymore. That's what Procter & Gamble does. We do contracting to meet a military mission. That's why. For years, our folks have bought into the idea that contracting has a customer who has a mission. Bupkis. Contracting has a mission just like everybody else. And we need to put all experts at the table and together get to that mission outcome. On the other side, business leadership versus business advisor. What I'm about to say will sound a little bit arrogant, and I understand that. But I think it's true. And that is, when it comes to turning dollars into fly, fight, win, which is our mission, there is no one, even in the acquisition team, that understands the FAR and the details of how to get that done than a contracting officer would. And so if in some cases, we can't just be passive any longer, sitting on the sidelines waiting for somebody to happen by with a contracting question, we ourselves have to understand the mission and the end states. And if we can find better business arrangements, better ways to pour ourselves like water through the rocks, to be the ninjas in the night that find a way to get to yes. Sometimes we have to be more proactive and take a leadership role and saying, hey, everybody follow me. Now that may sound like it's not humble, but I will tell you, I tell our people all the time, do not try to take credit for the things that you come up with. Don't do it. Give the credit away. Give the credit to our PEOs. Let them lead us. And the wing commanders, let them lead and have the credit. But our job is to find the ways to get to yes, and to make China's problem infinitely harder by accelerating literally everything. And we can do that even within the old Cold War system, even while I ask Congress to help us and give them ideas on how they can. So we have a flight plan set up. So it's not just a culture change or words, it's actually a very, very detailed strategic plan across 4 lines of effort. And the reason there's 4 lines of effort is because when you make a massive change like this, it's not just enough to change one thing, you've got to change everything. And so line of effort 1 is called building mission-focused business leaders. And it changes the training from the very beginning, initial skills training, all the way up around now, instead of just building contracting officers, we've identified 6 key knowledge, skills, and abilities that represent building a mission-focused business leader. And we're doing that from the ground up now. We even changed what people get paid because we were paying people not enough for the talent level that we're looking for. And we've added training gaps, filled training gaps where unlimited warrant holders, when you achieve that level, and it's freaking hard to do in the Air Force, I can tell you that board process is very stringent. But when you become a ninja in contracting, It used to be that the Air Force stops investing in you at that point. Now I'm asking the Air Force to start investing in you when that happens. And we send you to UNC Keenan Flagler School to learn balance sheets, cash flow statements, income statements, venture capital, private equity. That's the battlefield that we're losing in with China. We need our ninjas in contracting to align financial incentives with mission incentives and find new ways to attract innovative parts of American industry into defense. And so it's amazing the solutions that are just coming out of that. Line of effort 2 is called tools, not rules. We deleted every single mandatory procedure across Air Force contracting below my level, like 700 pages worth of gobbledygook that we had constrained ourselves on because we favored standardization over moving fast and innovating. And after we kicked the legs out from our folks with that, we stood up something called tactics, techniques, and procedures, which are non-mandatory, not under the FAR, but it flips the script and makes us a learning organization where anybody at even the lowest levels in contracting, they can walk to their computer, type in a simple online form on a new way, a better way to do something. We can learn something on a Monday, and everyone in Air Force contracting knows how to do it on Friday. And so simultaneously to taking out rules that don't need to be there, we've also pushed the authority to the tactical edge, and our regulation is set up now where there's minimum authorities at the tactical edge, not maximum. So the folks below me can actually delegate up to 100% of their own authority to the contracting officer in the trenches, but they can't curtail it below certain levels without my knowledge and permission. And so with that authority, we also got to get better training and better tools out. And so the tools, we've got ConIT, which is a new automated contract writing system that we're replacing all of our old systems with. But not just that, we've got e-filing solutions. We've got a new Air Force contracting portal where we can all communicate and develop unity of effort across all the stovepiped commands. The flight plan uses a methodology called objectives and key results that was used by Google successfully. John Doerr wrote a book about it called Measure What Matters. We have 83 key result teams operating simultaneously across all the stovepipes of the Air Force across those 4 lines of effort. And they are literally changing everything. So in addition to tools being IT tools, we're also pushing out ideas and strategies. So that's tools, not rules. LOE 3 is called owning the high ground, optimizing the acquisition enterprise. And this is where we've got a lot of freaking cosmic ideas that some of your folks might be interested in. They're really hard. They're not just contracting. This 1961 PPBS process, and then the limitation of execution flexibility that we have in execution year to move money around, it's crazy. We're never going to beat China using that kind of oversight. So we've come up with a pilot program called Free Cash Flow that we need congressional support for. But instead of a CEO or a CFO signing out cash flow guidance like it would happen in a corporation, and then incentivizing all the managers to save money and contribute to free cash flow so they can reinvest it in the value of a firm, we would do the exact same thing in the Air Force. But we would ask the 4 oversight committees of Congress to sign that cash flow out at the beginning of each Congress. And then we would incentivize PEOs and wing commanders to save money, put that money in a free cash flow account, and immediately, without any prior approval from Congress, we would give them 50% of that money immediately as an incentive in any color money they needed in, and they can execute it. The other 50% would go up to the corporate structure and reinvest rapidly, either to fill gaps in acquisition programs that we didn't know would happen, or to seize opportunities in technology through partnering with innovators in industry with money we didn't know we had before that execution year, or avoiding threats, but moving that money rapidly and buying more combat capability in a single future year's defense plan than we ever thought could be possible at the speed of relevance. And instead of the current oversight mechanisms of stodgy omnibus reprogramming bills or above threshold reprogrammings that take 90 days or 120 days or a year, instead of that, we would brief Congress every quarter and be completely open kimono and still allow them to yank a knot in us if they disagreed with what we're doing. But they've got to let go of the control, that micromanagement where they put the program name on every single account, and instead go portfolio wide with the funding so a PEO can move money rapidly. And then in addition to that, the current system, you might as well put the company name on it. So we give up our monopsonistic advantage from the very beginning. And frankly, I think that's part of the point. But we've got to do better than that. And frankly, I know I get in trouble for saying this, but the way we fund national security is actually more centrally planned than the Chinese Communist Party distributes money for their national security. And we've got to be sober about this. We can no longer use those Cold War processes in the same way, but we don't need to depart from strong congressional oversight either. And so we've got to find new ways forward. That's one of them. We've got a key result team on economic war planning with China. We've got a number of cosmic ideas, but we believe now that the output of contracting really can be aggregate time and money savings that can be reinvested rapidly in greater lethality and readiness for our force in ways that China could never keep up with. One more that I'll share with you is called flipping the business model. The current business model causes perverse incentives in industry and in government. Typically, when we have a new source selection for the next fighter aircraft or something, companies will compete. They'll buy in. They'll say, look, we'll spend 300 million of our own money or however much. And they buy in, and we pat ourselves on the back and congratulate ourselves. The power of competition got us a better deal. And it's crazy. We've just signed our own death warrant. And on the company side, when they invest that much money, they have to make that money back in many multiples later. Because the dollars today are more valuable than the dollars 10 years from now. So they've got to make 10 or 20 times that back later on in sustainment and upgrades for that investment to have made sense. So ironically, you've got companies that have to, it's not because they're mean or evil, they have to go lobby Congress against divesting old weapon systems because they got to make that money back for their shareholders. And so IP, intellectual property, has become like a religion, and it's a white knuckle thing. When IP all by itself is not the objective of even industry, it's sustained profitability is the objective. But there's other ways to get there, and we could drop the life cycle cost and increase the speed dramatically if we can flip the business model. Flipping the business model entails not allowing companies to buy in source selection for development and production, and in fact, making it hard for them to win on the basis of, you've got to convince me that you can make a minimum profit in development and production, not a maximum one. I don't care if you make stupid Apple profit, but you've got to make a minimum profit now. And you've got to align the incentives with cost schedule performance. Never again can you go to a quarterly results call with Wall Street and show how great you're doing and all my programs suck. We've got misalignment there. We've got to align those things. But if we made development and production so profitable, and then we say on the back end, IP is fungible. China's already got it, guys. And so we're going to set the open systems architecture. We're going to let a vibrant small business market and an aftermarket to worry about upgrades and sustainment. We're going to focus our exquisite contractors on recycling that money really fast. If we were to do that, the overall life cycle cost would drop dramatically, I think. And then in addition to that, Congress, the companies would actually be now aligned with us and lobbying Congress to have us divest old weapon systems so that we could use that money in the next generation of development and production. I want to be so good at this, so fast at this in America, that when we put the next generation air dominance fighter on a tarmac for the very first time, I want to fly a prototype of its replacement right over its head, right then. And that will screw with China's head. And that's the only way for us to get out in front, is to flip that business model and ensure sustained profitability without having 100-year programs and never being able to divest them. the A10, the B1, the B2, the J-Stars, the U2, the KC-135, the KC-10. I could go on and on and on and on. Good money after bad, we're throwing away for irrelevant capabilities in the big fight that could come when we could be recycling that money to move so much faster than China can move. So anyway, I hope that helps. The last line of effort is our joint warfighting capability and contracting. Your audience probably won't be as interested in that, but it's blending economics on the battlefield in our actual war plans, because we do contracting on the battlefield too.
We got just a couple minutes. I did want to touch on this one aspect of it because we had AFworks here earlier, and I'm wondering if you can just talk about the integration or coordination between what you're doing and what they're doing, and help the audience briefly understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a great partnership with AFworks, and we're actually, that synergy that at the table kind of. I mean, I meet with them every single week, as a matter of fact. I've actually got people embedded, contracting ninjas embedded. They're at the Capital Factory with them in Austin. Couple weeks ago, last week, I went to go speak at Fed Supernova with my friend Joe Lonsdale, who's pretty big venture capitalist. And together, he and I have been talking about how to blend venture capital on top of SBIR's investments so that we can accelerate dual use technologies in America very rapidly, and they can set up companies around that. And so on the contracting side, we've set up these teams called Rapid X cells. And in part, they support AFworks, but they also support everybody, all of the national level programs that are really aimed at complicating China's problems, where you could have a contracting squadron, and we do, out at Shepherd Air Force Base, for example. And by day, that contracting squadron is supporting the mission of Shepherd Air Force Base, international pilot training and all the things they do at Education Training Command. They're also a Rapid X cell. So they're working with Air Force research laboratories in helping the capacity of contracting and doing contracting sprints, where we can award 500 contracts in a week with leveraging these Rapid X cells. And so they're actually working the national problem while they're working right there in Wichita Falls in their own wing. And we're reproducing those Rapid X cells all over the place. And we've got contracting ninjas stationed outside the gate so that contractors can access us and figure out better ways for us to invite them to support in SBIRs. So we've got open calls in SBIRs where we don't even have a requirement. We just ask industry, what are your ideas? And then we have more focused mission area ones, even in the PEO portfolios, where we might do a pitch day, where we've hacked our own system and we've come up with an ability to do a regular pitch like would happen in regular private sector contracting or private sector business. And they can do literally like a 15-minute pitch. And at the end of that, you find out if you got a contract. You go sign a one-page contract, get a credit card swipe, and the money's in your account. Boom, go. Commercial solutions openings are another innovative tool we've been able to use to great effect. If you can imagine opening an online portal with just problems that we've posed, not requirements, in certain areas of interest. And then through a 3-spiral process, we get potentially thousands of contractors where we're doing the market intelligence and market research and act planning at the same time we're actually doing the source selection. So this 3-spiral process could happen in 30 days. And at the end of it, we actually come out with contract awards. We're not just doing that with SBIRs, we're doing that with even O&M money. We did it in support of DHHS to bring back and reshore the medical industry to the United States during the pandemic. So all of these kinds of things are just incredible innovations that come back to me from basically unshackling our contracting ninjas out there and letting them run.
Well, Cameron, we're going to have to button up. I think we could stay on for another hour, and if we had a vote of the audience, I think they would elect you to be the head of DoD procurement and probably get a couple star promotion at the same time. So this was super provocative. We'd love to have you back again, especially if we could spend a little more time on some of these themes. what you're doing in the Air Force at your level and at the AFworks level, I think, and it pains me to say this as an Army guy, is really setting the standard for acquisition and integration with the private sector across, across any of the services. And I mean, there's some good stuff going on everywhere, but you guys have really broken the code, and I think people can really learn a lot from you. So thanks a lot for being here, and best of luck to you as you continue to change the culture there at the Air Force and beyond.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bo, and to all the whole audience. Thank you guys. You are our partners, and we got to get after this together in a big, big freaking way. I will put our innovation and productivity against China's any day of the week and twice on Sunday, but we got to get out of each other's way. And so I would say, tell Congress, tell the leadership that you're committed to going after it with me, and let's stop just playing our little roles and see what we can break and get after this problem. So thank you so much.
Thanks again, Cameron. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Back to you guys.
Major Generals Holt and Young, above that was just over the top.
Yep.
Outstanding, gentlemen. Thank you both for your service and for your time here this afternoon. Above and beyond. Boy, that was great.
Thank you, General. That was the right way to end this entire thing. It was the capstone. Gosh, if I could be as articulate as you, I'd love to, but you said everything I wanted to be said about China, budgeting, the acquisitions process, getting out of our own way, and most importantly, you gave prescriptions on actually how to do things better. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day, General.
Yep. Thanks.